Good morning, everybody who's joining us. We will just give everybody a minute or so to come into the room, but welcome and thanks for joining us for this morning's session. I will just get our slide up here. So hopefully everybody can see and hear us. If you can, just pop in the chat. Let us know that you can hear everything okay. Tell us where you are this morning, and thank you for taking time out of busy time of the year to come and listen to this morning's session. We will be done by about 10:40. 11:10. All going to plan. So we're seeing a few comments come in, so obviously everyone can hear us. We've got Gavin, who's up in the northeast. We've got Galloway, and Paul's here. Morning, Paul. Excellent. Right, so everyone can hear us. Let's get cracking. So this is our App Advisory Plus App of the Month webinar for January. We're delighted to have the team from Comma with us today. I'm really excited about this session this morning. I think payments is a really hot area, so we're going to get some insight into why that's happening. Tom and Nick are going to share a bit about what Comma are doing in the market. So for those that don't know me, my name's Will Farnell. I'm founder of Farnell Clark and co-founder of App Advisory Plus. Really good to run these webinars on a monthly basis and share what we see going on out there in the app ecosystem. And I'm delighted that we're joined by Tom Beckenham today, founder and CEO of Comma. Good morning, Tom. Do you want to just give a quick introduction to who you are and where you've come from?
Yes, well, thank you, Will, and thank you so much for inviting us onto this webinar today. We're really appreciative of that. Yeah, my name's Tom. So I founded Comma just over 2 years ago. It's my second major venture, first in fintech, and just was really passionate about solving the problem that we're solving and just getting money moving faster through businesses. Yeah, that's probably a quick introduction as you can.
Perfect. We'll come on to Comma specifically in a moment. But we love these to be interactive, everybody. So please do use a Q&A box for any questions, and we'll pick those up towards the end of the session, unless there's anything that comes in that we need to pick up as we work through the session. Chat box is there for any comments, observations as we go through. But Tom and Nick, who's also on the call and going to share a quick overview of Comma a bit later on, we're all very happy to answer any questions and stuff as we go through the session. So what are we going to cover? Broad area topics here, but firstly, we're going to talk about the way that bookkeeping is moving, and I really do think that payments is the bit that's been missing from the jigsaw. So we're going to talk about how does that close that loop for you and for your clients and what you're delivering for your clients. There's been a lack of innovation, I think, over recent years. I think we're seeing real innovation now. Open banking is playing a key role in that. And I really do think that 2022 is going to be the year of payment technology, whether that's you helping your clients get paid faster or you helping your clients make payments more efficiently. So we're going to get Tom's view on kind of why that's happening and what's happening in that market. We'll talk about virtual payment runs. What does that actually mean, and how does open banking support and underpin that? And I think really importantly, how you as accounting firms can use this technology to deliver new services to your clients and really continue to get competitive advantage in this space. We've all had the benefit of using technology as a way to differentiate what we do. That's becoming harder to do, but using new technology like this really gives you an opportunity to set yourself apart and stay ahead of the curve. So we'll talk a bit more about that as well. Nick is going to give you a quick overview of Comma, and hopefully we're going to have loads of questions that we can provide answers to over the course of the session. So that's the plan. Tom, can you tell us a bit about Comma? Why did you create it? What does it do? And let everybody know if they don't already understand what it is you do.
Absolutely. So I created Comma initially because I'd seen firsthand the effects of late payments and of money not moving very fast. I just came from being a chief operating officer of a much larger company that was dealing with bigger businesses, and we had a lot of complexity in our billing process in that company, and I was really keen to solve a lot of that and make it just easier for people to interact with each other. And initially, Comma was very focused around the invoicing process, and we actually started receivables, and then found that it was just really hard to change payment behavior from the supplier side. So when the pandemic hit, that really basically threw everything up in the air that anybody was planning. And we found that there was like just significant change in the marketplace. And firstly, it was very hard at that point. Like nobody was paying anybody early. A lot of people were holding on to cash in the pandemic. Then there was a lot of sectors where the dynamic changed. All of a sudden, the supplier became in control in many industries, especially in food, where food suppliers used to be paid on very long terms, and then now, like in order for supermarkets to get food, they have to pay them almost instantly. There was also became an increasing amount of outsourcing of not just bookkeeping but entire financial operations, and everybody, of course, had to work remotely. So. Yeah. Things like so for me, I was really passionate about that solving problems of just helping money move around faster, because I just saw like so much as inefficiency in the process, from just the way we invoice each other to how we then pay, and there's also just universal hatred of logging into online banking and keying in payments. Yeah. As timing would have it, we look at this problem right as open banking and open banking payments were starting to come out. But everybody was looking at the kind of sexy areas of like, buying crypto and, topping up share trading accounts and all this sort of stuff, or replacing Stripe. And very few people were looking at the day-to-day stuff that small businesses do, exchanging, paying salaries and paying bills. So we tapped into something which, very few people are looking at, and we were really keen to solve it.
Yeah, perfect, excellent. And we'll talk a bit more about specifically what Comma does compared to some of your, and I use the term carefully, perceived competitors, because I think we're going to talk a little bit about kind of where you fit within the payment space, because I think I've certainly looked at this and thought, well, actually, you don't do what a lot of the other payment providers do. So we'll get onto that in a while. But you mentioned their outsourced finance functions and so on, and certainly as a practitioner, the big growth area in our firm right now is in outsourced finance, where we're delivering end-to-end finance functions for clients. But in addition to that, we're also providing kind of core bookkeeping services on a daily or weekly basis for a whole bunch of clients that are not really outsourced finance function, but we're certainly doing a huge amount of bookkeeping for them. And for a very, very long time, we've had this challenge of, wouldn't it be great? And I think I remember talking to Xero probably 5 years ago, talking about, well, at some point, we're going to get to the point, surely, where we can tick a box in Xero and it creates the payment for the client to approve. And that's kind of 5 years ago, and we're thinking, oh, wouldn't that be amazing? And we never got to the point of being able to really do payments for clients, because we didn't want to take on the risk of logging into client bank accounts, and with very few exceptions, the banks are not great at giving third-party access for somebody to set up payments. I think we had a very complex system with NatWest for one client for a while, and I think HSBC do something that lets you set up payments for approval, but it's not very easy. It's not very common. I mean, I'm guessing that these are exactly the things that you were looking at and said, we need to solve this problem. Is that fair?
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of concentration on bigger businesses, from banks in particular, and most banks, like there is corporate banking systems. They're big and cumbersome and clunky, but at least they can do kind of things like mass payment. But the smaller you get, the less you have. And even the challenger banks that were looking after kind of sole traders and small businesses, still are kind of thinking, well, these small businesses only make a couple of payments, right? So, we make it sort of easy to make one at a time. But, if you do kind of anything like paying salaries or something, like even when it comes to like 3 or 4 payments, it's annoying. And especially if you're on your phone, flipping between your email, if you're trying to pay a bill and your phone to kind of get that done is really tricky. So and there's this perception from clients that accounting systems and payroll systems allow you to pay, just like what you said, because they use that terminology like pay your bills and this sort of thing, and you expect that you can actually pay, but you can't. It just doesn't let you, and that's exacerbated in the UK in particular because of our banking system. So a lot of the banking system is based on the BACS model, which is created in the 60s. I'm pretty sure it's the 60s, then faster payments, which is what most people use today to make payments, was layered on top of that system.
Yeah.
Now, salary providers like BACS bureaus use it. So actually, I'll talk a bit further before I talk about BACS bureaus. Yep. Currently, before open banking, all banks were just walled gardens. You couldn't get in, you couldn't do anything outside the bank. Maybe if you're lucky, there was some app inside the bank that helped you do something, but the bank was it. And that meant they hold a lot of data, they have a lot of information, and it's very hard to kind of move from one to the other. So a few years ago, that was opened up, and open banking and PSD2 was kind of a movement to really disrupt that whole walled garden thing that was going on with banks. But even after that happened, there's still some issue with how you could connect kind of these systems together, and mainly and in the UK that was the worst that it could be. Perhaps the US is slightly worse, but the UK was difficult in that. In order to make a bulk payment, you generally needed to use BACS. And most small businesses can't access BACS because it's a credit facility. It's expensive. The money in 3 days. Yeah. So you have to go and apply for it, have 10 meetings with your bank manager, and maybe you'll get a limit of like 10 grand. That may not be enough to pay your salary. So often what happened is that small businesses would go to BACS bureaus like ADP or one of these kind of bigger payroll bureaus or other bureaus that would do BACS services. And it's clunky and cumbersome to set up and costly to do. So most businesses just plain resort to like, forget it. We'll just, do this stuff manually. So when it came to someone like Xero, like they could export these BACS files, but nobody would use them because they didn't have BACS.
Exactly. And that's a misconception, isn't it? Because people think, oh yeah, you can create a BACS file, but you can't do anything with the BACS file. And we looked at BACS Bureau for payroll and things, and it's expensive. It costs money for people to do. And I think as well as the tech online security has got better, the banks have just created more friction in terms of making a payment, haven't they? So even now, if I want to make a single payment from my Barclays account or whatever, normally I've still got to get PIN Sentry up, and I've still got to put a code in to pay somebody that I've paid before. So we're just layering steps on the process, aren't we? And of course, this is what you guys have solved. So we're I'm looking forward to seeing how that pans out. So I think in terms of closing this gap, because I think it's really important that we can do that, and it does feel like it, if we imagine bookkeeping as a jigsaw, the last piece that goes somewhere in the middle is the bit about how do we help clients make those payments. And I think the interesting thing for me when I look at Comma is that a lot of the payment tools that people might be familiar with are ones where you might use in terms of those kind of outsourced finance function type things that you're delivering, where you actually want to make payments, but you perhaps provide a wider offering here, because actually it's about there's benefit for all of our clients, because we've just said about if I want to make a payment, I've got to key in the PIN Sentry and everything else, and you're going to automate some of that activity. So when we think about 2022, and I said in a LinkedIn post promoting this webinar that for me 2022 is a year of payments, because we see so much activity in the space, whether that's helping clients kind of make payments. So you're doing that. We see prepayment cards like Pleo and Soldo. We see lots of different bits of technology that are helping us make those payments. Then there's the technology that's helping us get paid quicker, in terms of credit control and go cardless and all of these other tools. So is it just me, or is it the time is now for payments? Is that something you agree with?
Yeah, I'd say you're right. Like, we're at like, if you go to any of the kind of the banking expos and things, like you'll see that, like, just every second person has some sort of payment solution. So there's a couple of reasons for that. One is regulation has forced a change. Second is pandemic. Pandemic has definitely forced a change in terms of how we collaborate and how we work together. The third thing is that there's been a massive surge in funding for fintech. Yeah. And that has created a huge number of new fintechs and new innovation in the area. So you see that, from card payments through to everything else. And yeah, I think that there's just an increasing appetite for more and more solutions.
Yeah. And I think it's really difficult for us as practitioners, because we look at an ecosystem that's vast, and we talk about payments, and it's a bit like, one that people can probably relate to is forecasting tools and reporting tools. There's a whole bunch of them, and we talk about it, and over time we've got to understand which ones do which bits well. We haven't really had the opportunity to do that yet with the payment space, because it's so new. So for the benefit of everybody that's listening here, where does commerce sit, and what's different in terms of your proposition to perhaps people like Telaroo, who are others that people might have heard of?
Absolutely. Like when we first did our research at Comma, we looked at this huge long tail of businesses that were underserved, and one of the things you see is that there's this kind of hurdle of does a system is the setup of a system worth it? Does it actually, like, the hassle of getting something up and running, is that worth the cost of worth the problem that it solves? And many of the systems that were out there, like Bax was one, and the second one was using virtual accounts, which was meant, which requires usually a significant amount of due diligence to set up, especially because they're like e-money accounts where they hold money, and there's regulation around what that requires. So often the cost and setup of either these Bax or virtual account solutions just outweighed the problem that you're solving in many regards. So it's just hard to get to these small businesses. And the difference in what we do is we work with a great deal of effort to connect directly to existing bank accounts. We leveraged a lot of what open banking offered, but we were by far the first person to look at these bulk APIs to do business-to-business transactions, because we have a company which has many SMEs transferring money to many other people or other SMEs, and we're very few people are looking at that sort of complexity. But what we've been able to do is enable you to, a small client for very little money can inexpensively get up and running with our payment automation solution and use their existing account to process the payment. So and it kind of is like a new category of system.
Yeah.
And we weren't sure whether to call it that yet. But as we are automating the payment and not 100% doing it, we can onboard people much faster, and it's in the end, it's what SMEs want. They don't want anything else in the way.
Yeah, and I think this is we had this conversation briefly yesterday, and I think it's what is really, really interesting here is so just to kind of clarify for people, you unlike some of the payment tools, you're not making the payment, you're not using virtual accounts. What you're doing is you are almost payment automation. So rather than somebody going in and making 5 individual payments within their Barclays account, you're going to save them 4 of the 5 minutes or whatever that they might be spending setting those payments up. But equally, you're providing a bridge for perhaps the accountant who's sitting there with Xero and saying, right, based on your payables ledger, these are the things that we think you might want to pay, Mr. Client. Log into your Comma account. You can see what we think you need to pay, and you tick a button, and obviously you're going to come on and Nick's going to give us a brief overview in a while. But in a simplistic way, is that, have I summarized effectively what we're doing?
Great. Our view is that so essentially what we're doing is we're getting data into your bank, so you can then authorize that, so save you all the entry of that data. And in our view that API driven payments will really replace everything. Connecting something to your bank is very, very powerful, because it means that you can collaborate and work on payment runs outside of the bank, and then when you're ready, kind of authorize those at the end.
So this is, and correct me if I'm wrong with this, but it might be a nice way to summarize this. I know lots and lots of accountants that got really excited when they realized that with Go Cardless, they could automate their accounts receivable, because you almost set up your recurring bill. It triggers the Go Cardless to collect the money. It reconciles the invoice in Xero, and it puts your money in your bank account. Almost what you're doing here is the same on payables, in terms of we're going to identify the invoices that need paying. We're going to click them. You're going to approve them. You're going to one click in your banking app to make the payments, and it marks all the invoices paid in Xero.
Correct. Yeah, because it closes that loop, because we know exactly when the payment was made, and then send messages back to say, hey, this is paid. So we are exactly like Go Cardless for payables.
Yeah. So everyone's listening. If you remember how excited you got when you realized that you could do that with Go Cardless, it's time to get excited again, because you can do that with Comma on payments. And that kind of makes it really clear, doesn't it? Because it's automating that process that historically took time, and whilst 5 invoices might not make a huge amount of difference, people tend to pay lots more than 5 invoices. So ramp that up for a 50-person payroll, ramp that up for somebody that's doing a weekly payment run of 40 invoices. We start to see real savings, and from an accountant point of view, multiply that across the 30 clients that you're looking after that week. We start to see kind of real gains here, don't we?
Yeah. Well, we do. The feedback we have from SMEs is that even in some of the obscure banks that don't fully support the bulk payment functionality, even tiny incremental savings or any benefit that we bring in that payables process is welcomed. We can't understand enough how much business owners just can't stand logging into the bank to make payments. It's just time they never get back. And there's this whole emotional thing as well, as especially with salaries, of am I going to stuff it up? By having that data connection means you can't stuff it up, and it just becomes you don't have to think about it as much as you would otherwise.
Yeah. So a couple of questions that come in that are relevant here, Tom. So do you link to HSBC, and how does it compare to TransferWise?
Yes, we link to HSBC. HSBC will be releasing faster payment-based bulk payments soon, but we and that is openly known. It is currently still backspaced for HSBC only, which is slightly frustrating, but it works very nicely. Actually, one of the nicest implementations of open banking out of everybody. The way it works and they've removed a lot of the limitations some of the other banks have. So HSBC is one of our favorites with open banking, for sure.
Great, excellent. And the second question, does Comma have to work from bills in Xero, or can it be linked to Xero Payroll?
Yes, it can be linked to Xero Payroll. Currently, what way we do that is we, of course, does support bills. It just syncs all the information across. It keeps it in sync at all times. We actually have quite a clever way of doing that in terms of you can flick back to Xero, make a change, and flick back to Comma, and updates within a few seconds. With Payroll, currently we allowing customers to export the BACS file, and we just interpret that and use that to make the payment. But it isn't BACS. We can use most banks. We do faster payment-based bulk payments.
Excellent, good stuff. I'm getting a bunch of other questions now on payroll specific.
Yeah.
Can you, and I'm assuming from what you've said there, so the question is around BrightPay. So if people can create a BACS file from BrightPay, they can import that into Comma, and it would do exactly the same thing as it would with Xero.
Well, we're very close with BrightPay. We've actually done one step better than that. So BrightPay has implemented a Comma export format. And you can just import that directly into Comma. Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, they're meant to release that in January, but that is actually going in the February update for BrightPay. But we can give you that access to that feature right now if you ask us. But yeah, we're very close to the BrightPay team.
Perfect. Excellent. So thanks for those questions. Keep them coming because it brings this to life. So we agree, 2022 year of payments. I think we've clearly kind of set where you fit in the market. And interestingly, we've got Rachel from BrightPay here who says, yes, it's live in the next update. So for all those BrightPay customers, a bit of excitement for you there. We've talked a bit about open banking, and we've talked a bit about virtual payment runs. What just for kind of so everyone understands what we're talking about here, what do you mean when you talk about a virtual payment run?
Right. So prior to things like Comma, you could do a payment run in a couple of different ways. If you were trying to collaborate on any payment run, almost the only way to do it is via a spreadsheet. The accounting systems really didn't have anything great that was built in to do it. You can sort of use batch payments in Xero, but it wasn't just a very collaborative environment. So what a virtual payment run is it's a way to create a payment run inside an app that is shareable between members of your team, or if you're, for example, a service provider, you can share that with clients. And then, for example, you're a bookkeeper creating a payment run for a client, you can then edit. The client can then say, yeah, I agree that's what you're recommending I pay, but maybe I won't pay this person yet, or I've agreed to pay them partially. And you can collaborate and make, add and remove things from those payment runs. And that's what we really talk about with virtual payment runs. It's a way for bookkeepers or team members to set up payments outside of your bank, and then and share and collaborate with other parties.
Yeah, and a question that kind of piggybacks on the back of that almost, with banks now verifying bank details when setting up payees. Yes. Does Comma verify bank details as part of the process? How does that work?
We will. So that's the confirmation to pay program which is run by Pay UK, was initially accessible to banks only, what they call AISPs, confusingly. And there's a second phase of that program, which we'll be participating with, which will allow us to do confirmation pay as well. But a lot of the banks will check the payees when it's sent via API as well. But it's a longer conversation because a lot of stuff we have to do underneath the hood to make sure that payments have left. But yeah, our banking guy will talk about that for hours. But it's a good question, and something that will be in the software very soon.
Great. Thank you for that, Tom. And so moving on, we talked about kind of what you do and some of the obvious benefits. I see that many of the people, I recognize some of the names on the attendee list here. Clearly these are firms that have capitalized on technology. It's given them a competitive advantage because despite what we get told, adoption of cloud accounting in its kind of best sense is still, it's a minority rather than the majority, but the minority are beginning to get there. So deploying new technology like this is how the people on this call and firms like us continue to stay ahead of the curve. I think this is a great opportunity for firms to really gain competitive advantage by adding another layer to what they do. I think that's a given. I'm sure you'd agree with that. And actually, interestingly, one of the questions we've got was one of the questions I was going to ask to you in terms of the specific question is there any data yet to showcase, quantify the value to customers, i.e. time saved, efficiency gains, whether we can answer that, but certainly from the firms, accounting firms, particularly that you've been working with, but end clients as well. Where are the real benefits? Where are people saying, hey, Tom, this has transformed our lives?
Yeah, like, and again, it's early days for the whole company, but we are transforming lives as much as we can. If we start talking about the end client, the SMEs themselves to start with, they rave about the product and give us lots of great feedback on it. And there's lots more stuff they want to see beyond what we've started with as well. The main thing, as I said earlier, just making incremental improvements on a payment process is just better. It saves hours of time, even for small companies that have small numbers of staff. But it's more than just that. It's not just the time saving. It's also if you're spending 2 hours doing something fun or enjoyable or productive, it's still 2 hours, but it's hours that like a business owner feels that getting somewhere. With making payments, which is squeezing in between meetings or late at night, that's never seen as something which is like a really super productive thing to do. It's something you have to do, and your staff and your suppliers depend on it. But because it's annoying, people tend to delay it. And I have a strong view that does actually delay a lot of money moving down the supply chain. A lot of late payments are not caused by anything evil. It's just plain, haven't found time to do it, I've forgotten, or haven't squeezed it in somewhere. So from the SMEs, there's huge benefit for the accountants and bookkeepers. So the initial benefits that we saw were any accountant or bookkeeper that was already making payments for customers. Comma just became a much more efficient way to do it. When we first looked at this, we identified there was one accounting firm that had mapped out this 17-step process that they worked on with their clients. It started with a spreadsheet that was shared backwards and forwards to agree, payments that were going to be made. They then kind of copied all these invoices into a shared folder, and then they had to have bank access, of course. So being added to the bank account meant kind of being added to the mandate, signing forms, waiting 6 weeks, and so on. You then had this stack of cards that were in your drawer for all the different accounts that you had access to. And again, with pins and stuff like this that you'd stored in some hopefully secure manner. And then, you're logging in and entering payments, then sending them back to the client for dual authentication. It is a long-winded process to make payments to someone else. So there were some accountants that are doing a lot of payments, but many were doing it for a minority of clients or people that really begged them to do it. And there's this whole opportunity to offer this simply and easily to everybody. And it can be very easy to just bolt it onto your bookkeeping process. Or, you can just plain let clients know that they, once bookkeeping is done, just log into this app and then you can, create your own payment run. It's like, we ourselves, even internally, our bookkeeper does send us a payment run, and it's just nice. I get an email, I click on it, I can then pay everything all in one hit, and it's just a nice way to finish off the bookkeeping process. So the feedback has been good. There's lots, it is still we're working with banks that don't always move fast. So there's lots of things that came up through our pilot programs, which we started back in March last year, and we had tons of feedback from lots of different firms. But yeah, it's been very positive, and we've had a lot of support from the accounting industry.
And obviously, you're going to be spending time collecting case studies and
exactly.
and things as you implement with firms. So I'm conscious we got about 6 minutes or so left. Nick is going to just give us a quick run through. Then we'll have some time to pick up some of the final questions. So let me just give you a chance to share your screen, Nick. All yours.
Cheers, Ro. Cool. I'll keep this pretty brief, and what I'll do at the end of this, I'll share a slightly longer version of this demo, just if anyone wants to go back and look at it in a bit more depth. But can you see my screen? All good?
Yep, all good.
Perfect. So this is the initial dashboard inside Commerce, where this is where you can manage multiple businesses. So you can manage as an external finance person, you can add multiple companies which you work on. So I'm just going to click into our first one. So we've got Comma Test Limited. This is just a Xero account which we've set up for our demos. And this is synchronized and basically created a mirror image of what we've got inside Xero. It's pulled through a list of our invoices, our supply details, any references against those bills, when they're due, and the total amount that's due against them. We've used this for a few demos. We've drawn down the balance. That's updated. It's pushed back to Xero, and it's also synchronized back to Commerce. So the good thing about this is we can never overpay a bill. We're using the data that's come from Xero. So we can't do any fat fingers and accidentally key an extra zero on the end of something and end up chasing payments and making a mistake that way. But what I will show you for the demo is actually going to show you the payroll function, because I know there's a few questions that come up for this. So currently we handle payroll for an import, as we mentioned. We can do that through the Xero backs files. You can download the template from BrightPay, or you can just populate the template, which we've currently got as well, which is our own formula. But so from here, you can really simply just drop in that file. So I've pulled this from our Xero account. We've got a payroll file here. I'm going to drop this into Comma, and it's going to create for us what we call a virtual payment run. So each payment run has a unique URL. These can be shared internally. They can be shared with a client if you're doing this on their behalf. But basically what we've done is with that payroll file, we've created a payment run. We've got all the details that we need to push to the bank to actually make payments in bulk to all of our staff. So we've got 7 staff here, or 6 staff, and we've also got HMRC. We've linked our bank account already, and from here we can share this via URL. We can send an email, which just opens up a template. Or if we're making the payment ourselves, or if the client's making, or if with a client already, we can click pay, and it will push us through to the payment process. So first screen you'll see is just a quick confirmation screen. This is where you can also choose a future dated payment date. So this is really useful for things like payroll, because you can come in a couple of days ahead of time. You're not waking up on payday on Friday morning, keying in all these payments first thing to make sure everyone's paid before they get to work. You can set this and just pretty much forget about it. So you can select Friday, or we can still use faster payments, as Tom mentioned, and do a same day payment. So from here, I click confirm. This is where it will then push me through to my bank. So we are using open banking, so there is still the same level of security that you need to process a payment, which is the usual process. We're going to log into our bank account using our PIN Sentry. So this is super secure. You have to have access to make the final payment. You can do everything else before that outside the bank, but when it comes to actually initiating the payment, you need to do that with your login. So I've just logged in using my PIN Sentry. Straight away, you'll see it's pushed through those 7 payees and upload that payment file basically through an API to Barclays in this instance. We've got 7 payees for a total amount. With this one login, I can then click continue, and we're going to fire off those payments instantly to those accounts. Because Barclays is faster payments, and as Tom said, only HSBC isn't. We're going to use faster payments, going to send those instantly, and it should push us back to Comma and mark those as paid. So as you can see, that's a really quick way of us paying staff. It's only 7 staff this time, which that probably takes 15, 20 minutes. If you've got a longer list of staff, you're going to save even more time on top of that, because the process is still the same. If that was bills and invoices that you'd pulled from Xero, it would then synchronize those payments back to Xero or Sage, QuickBooks, whatever platform you're using, and mark those as paid. Great. Yeah, that's it. It's a quick crash course.
And Nick, just to clarify on that, obviously, if you're in a situation where the client is making the payments, they would get that link, they'd open that screen, and they would just go through that process that you've gone through there, rather than the alternative of them manually creating each of those transactions in Barclays, and that's where the time saving comes.
Exactly. Yeah. You can offer this as a service where you do all that painstaking part, I guess, at the beginning of setting up the payment, but it's obviously really easy through that CSV upload, as you saw there. Once you've got everything ready, you've got all the details that you need to make a payment. You can share it with the client. The client clicks on that link, takes them straight through to the page we saw just before this. They click pay, and then they just log into the bank and pay everything in bulk.
Great, excellent,
perfect.
We've got a few more questions that I'd just like to try and rattle through. So I think you've answered the most recent one, which is how long does a payment order take to be processed? it's kind of instant, isn't it? Once same way as faster payments would be, but you've got the flexibility to set that up when you want that payment to go out.
Exactly, it's the same speed as your bank as it would have been to key it in manually. So there's no difference.
Perfect. Obviously, the big question: how much does Comma cost to use?
Yep. So there's a big question because we were tweaking this model just recently. So Nick, are we ready to announce pricing for the product today?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Great. So we have a model for accountants, and we have a model for SMEs directly. So accountants do get a discount on the SME price. So we have decided to go for an unlimited model for SMEs of £22 a month, enables you to make as many payments as you like to as many people as you like, both in salaries and payroll. And for accountants, we're offering it to you for £12 a month for the same deal. And we were initially looking at kind of models that scaled all the way up to kind of larger businesses. But when we found that we modeled this out, we found that the vast majority of companies were a certain size, would have been on our lowest tier. And we just thought, forget it. Let's just do unlimited, and you know, we'll and it all models out underneath. So we're very happy that we're able to offer that to all of you for that price. Cheap as chips is the short answer.
Excellent. And just while we're on that, we've got an offer to share with everybody on the webinar anyway. So if you wanted to give this a go, you can sign up and get your first month free. We're going to send you a link in a follow-up email after the webinar for you to take advantage of that offer to have a play around with the product. So we'll share all that with you later. I will pick up the last couple of questions, but just as we're conscious of time, if anybody needs to dive off, I always like to finish these sessions with some key takeaways. So firstly, as I've tried to get across in here, payments is the final piece of the jigsaw. If you're doing outsourced bookkeeping, if you're doing outsourced finance function, this is the bit that's been the kind of the problem, the bit that we've not had the ability to control. And now with tools like Comma, we have a solution to enable us to do that. And in following on from that, end-to-end bookkeeping is the key for us as accountants in terms of ensuring we get good data quality, and we have the ability to add value services to what we deliver for clients. Payment technology will be a key competitive advantage in 2022. So use the opportunity now, stay ahead of the competition, look at how you can deploy this technology for you and your clients. And I think really interesting thing for me here is that initially I saw Comma in the way that I'm sure many others do, in terms of it's another way to make payments. I think where Comma really has an advantage is that it's one of those tools that I think you could almost, we have a standard app stack. So every client we work with works with Xero, they work with Dex, and most of them will use Stripe and go cardless if it's relevant to their sector. And I think Comma is another of those tools that you could just drop into your core stack and say, look, this is part of what we offer. And if you've got 500 clients or whatever, then you probably want to have a conversation with Tom and Nick about how you make that work. But I think what we've seen today means that it's another of those tools that has application across a big chunk of your client base. So think about how you can do that. Final questions. What have we got? Let's see if there's anything else that we need to pick up here. So clarification, Tom, is that £12 per month per client for accounting firms?
Yes, so it's £12 per month per client.
Yeah. And have you, I mean, given the comment I just made, have you thought about kind of if there's a scalable route there, an all you can eat for firms that say, actually, you know what, we want to offer this to all of our clients, whether they're going to use it or not? Has the thinking got to that stage? Yeah,
well, pricing is one of those really important conversations to have very early in a company, and we're ready to announce these two models today, but there are lots of conversations going on around different models here. So yeah, worth just having a chat.
Yeah, Perfect. We will be sharing the webinar, Peter. So we'll share a link to the webinar in the follow-up email, so you'll be able to pick that up. Peter also says mistakes happen. What's the experience of resolving a payment error made by the accountant? Have you come across it yet, or a client making a payment error, or are the security mechanisms in there strong enough?
Yeah, so we're adding to this all the time, and so far, like it's harder to make a mistake because the information comes directly from the bill. Which, if you're using a scanning system like Dext or another one, you hope that that there's very little kind of human intervention in that information. The only errors that we've seen have come from because we haven't yet got the confirmation of payee, is like misentering payee details, but this is usually picked up in the payment itself. Very rarely what happens is that if you miskeyed that, then it'll come back to the account later on. But yeah, there's more and more work to be done all the time on doing on that, and also, of course, we have a whole kind of team that looks at all of the evil stuff that goes on as well, around fraud and anti-money laundering and everything like that. So we, even though we're automating bank accounts, and the banks do this as well, it's also our duty to do as much as possible to prevent that on our side too. So we have a whole system around pay fraud that is being worked on. Long story short, we take lots of care at the moment, and we're adding more and more and more to that side all the time to make it as safe as it possibly can be.
Perfect. I'm going to try and rattle through these because I'm conscious of time, but it's fantastic that we've got so many questions. Do you link with Clydesdale at the moment?
Nick, is that live? But we are, because I know there's a whole Virgin group as being, I think Clydesdale is now renamed Virgin after the takeover. I think Clydesdale acquired Virgin, then Virgin, then they're taking the Virgin branding. And I'm sure that all of those banks are either live now or will be live very shortly, because we're definitely working on them last month.
Yeah, and are you dealing with multi-currency payments yet?
Not yet, but that is something that's absolutely on the agenda. We are looking for people to feedback on what we're planning on international payments. So if you do a lot of them, then it'd be great to speak to you.
Perfect. Does Comma highlight if new supplier, new payment details are entered, or whether I'm not sure what Caroline's asking, whether whether details are changed or whatever? Does it flag anything up?
We have planned a feature around this. We've demonstrated the mock-ups of how that will work to several accountants, but it's not live yet. But that is something that's planned. We actually have a way. What we're planning is a way to enable someone to create a note or evidence of what they've received to indicate a pay change, and both warn if you're only paying that pay for the first time, and also if it's changed, who's changed it, and why. Because often what the banks do is they say, hey, this sort code account number you haven't used before, but it's, it could be anything. So there's very little that connects it back to where that change came from. So there's it is on the agenda, and I'm happy to talk that through with you to show you what we're planning.
Great. Questions keep coming in, but I'm really conscious of time. So what I would say, Nick, what's the approach if people have got questions that we haven't quite got to? Thank you ever so much for putting so many questions in. It's really great. How can people follow up with these questions, Nick?
Yeah, you can definitely send us an email, hello@usecomma.com, which I've just put in the chat. Feel free to reach out, or to myself direct, nick@usecomma.com. More than happy to arrange talks with certain team if you need to talk to us.
Excellent. So firstly, I'm delighted that almost everybody stayed right up until now. So thank you ever so much, everybody, for taking the time to join the session. Clearly, it's been useful given the number of questions. Thank you ever so much to Tom and Nick for jumping on and joining us this morning. I'm kind of really excited by what Comma has to offer, and I'm sure others will equally have come to the same conclusion. So thank you both for taking the time. We'll circulate a recording. We'll circulate the link to Nick's demo, and we'll circulate the details if people want to take up the offer to get that free month to have a play and see how the system is working. So thank you ever so much, everybody. Again, thanks again, Nick and Tom. Been really insightful. Hope it's been enjoyable for you guys, and we look forward to seeing everyone soon.
Thank you so much, Will. Really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for turning up. A few days before the end of January. It's very much appreciated.
Brilliant. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Take care.
Bye.